Well, I hope you're ahead of plans for your holiday season. Hope you're on task. I hope you're not wearing out Amazon. I want us, we're going to jump ahead a little bit in our pursuit of how we got where we are and kind of why we have a tendency to view things the way that we do. And we had talked about Barton W. Stone's movement. Remember, they called themselves Christians. Alexander Campbell's followers called themselves disciples. It's kind of interesting because when 1906, when there started to be a separation of these groups, you had the Christian church and you had the disciples of Christ, and then you had the Church of Christ, which is not something that either of them, they would refer to it that way, obviously, because Scripture does, but they wanted to be known only as Christians, and they wanted to be non-denominational, so they didn't put any titles. They just called themselves Christians or disciples. Campbell's were disciples, and Stone's were Christians. I also want you to remember that it really, if you will, these movements that we've looked at, Abner Jones, Elias Smith, the major focus, and we're coming out of the Revolutionary War, we're coming out of a time of high insecurity and a time of fear, and when folks do that, they grasp for something that's real. They grasp for something that they can hold on to, and that's like, you know, we mentioned, if you remember Desert Shield and Desert Storm, we really latched on to prayer. Even though it had become pretty unpopular by then, it was like, you know, ignore all that, we're going to go back and pray. And I think that's always going to be a part of us, that when times, you know, when times go well, we tend to be pretty self-sufficient or view ourselves that way. When they don't, we tend to look for, like I say, something we can hold on to, and religion is part of that. And I think you saw that in these men. And part of the frustration was the rejection of foreign governments, rejection of foreign religious dignitaries, be it the Pope, be it Archbishop of Canterbury in England, be it, if you remember, that John Wesley gave the American Methodist churches their independence, but he put Asbury over them, and Asbury tended to be thumbed down hard, and that created a lot of, if you remember, why is this guy telling me where I can preach and not preach and all that kind of stuff. So those the two main things of the Reformation, and remember, these guys call themselves reformers, not restorers. They were trying to reform, not the Roman Catholic Church, which is what the Reformation was about, but about the division among Christians into all these different sects. And if you remember, by the time our nation started, there were over 500 different flavors of Christianity. The Reformation movement, if anything, did not reform the Roman Catholic Church. It just splintered Christianity into all kinds of different sects. And that's what they're responding to. And there's a parallel between, we don't want the king to tell us what to do, and we don't want Asbury to tell us what to do. We don't want to be controlled by any exterior force. We don't want to be called anything other than what Scripture calls us. And that's pretty much, no hierarchy, no names other than Christian. But unity, we need to all come back. But it wasn't necessarily we need to come back through Scripture. That's going to be later. It's we need to get rid of our confessions of faith. We need to get rid of our sectarian names and just get together and all be Christians. And that's almost as far as it went. Now, I was sharing with you that Stone, very much unity. Campbell, very much unity. Stone, very much unity to the point that he would accept things that you and I would probably feel uncomfortable with. because of this macro view. Let's just all be Christians. Let's not have creeds, confessions of faith, all that. And if we can do that, for instance, Campbell never required baptism as being a disciple. In other words, if you were a Baptist and you had been immersed, he would accept your baptism. It wasn't about kind of a Church of Christ baptism view. And so what I want us to do is we're going to jump to the mid part of the 1800s, and we're going to move up to about 1900, because this is the most radical change in the movement, and this is the next generation. Because Campbell died in 1866, Stone died in 1844, and the reason that there are a lot of people involved in this. We don't have time to go into all of that, and I would encourage if you start teaching something that is perceived as divisive, you're doing just the opposite. And that's the challenge of a unity movement. And guys, what I want you to understand is in the next half century, it's going to start moving away from a unity movement, kind of a necessity. So, Stone and Campbell is where we tend to stop, because the union of those two movements, and I told you about Cane Ridge, and I told you about 20 or 30,000 people coming to this revival, and all the amazing things that took place there. These movements are growing pretty rapidly, to the extent when Smith and Jones and